Hello, I'm Dan.
And I'm Simon.
And this is the Wikicast, a podcast where Wikipedia takes us to a random article and we talk about what we find. Simon, what are we talking about this week?
This week, Daniel, we're talking about Mascot, parentheses, Sternwheeler.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Sternwheeler.
Oh, I'm just Sternwheeler.
Oh, weiß mein Handy. Weiß mein Sternwheeler.
My mascot is kaput. Hello everyone. Hello to all our German listeners.
Quickly offend our German listeners there. Very fine. Very good.
Yes, this is it's a boat.
I see.
It's a steam boat, and it's got I randomized on this article, and I saw there was a picture of a boat, and there was this blurb at the top, and I thought, great, it's going to be quite a short article. And then I scrolled down. This thing goes on forever. This thing has a huge Wikipedia article.
You grieve.
It is a sternwheeler is a boat that is driven by a wheel at the back at the stern. That's why it's called that. And it was built a steamboat built in 1890,
Whoa.
which primarily operated between Portland, Oregon, down the Willamette and Columbia rivers to points on the Lewis and Lake rivers. So I guess there's sort of tributaries, including towns in Washington State, basically.
Yeah.
And I am still confused as to why it has such a big article, because it was built in 1890, it burned down in 1911, and apparently in those 21 years it captured a bunch of hearts sufficient to merit a Wikipedia article.
Gosh.
It was described as the prime example of a jobbing boat.
A what, sorry?
A jobbing boat.
Oh, right. You did say that.
Yeah,
okay.
that's what he thought. I assume that means that it's just the kind of boat that you would contract, as if you were a D&D party. You would find a transport, and it would take you somewhere, and it could take whatever cargo you need. So the picture that it has is, to give the readers at home some sense of what we're talking about here, I would estimate. Actually, I don't need to estimate. I am almost certain it's going to have the length of it somewhere. It was 130 feet long, with a depth of 5 feet. Oh no, sorry, that's the depth below the waterline. So the beam is 20.
So very, very,
very shallow.
The depth of 5 feet.
And its beam is 24 feet. So it's about 100 by 25 feet, or in actual sensible units, about 30 by sort of 10-ish meters.
Sean Connery's favourite sport.
And the picture that they have is it's being loaded with cordwood. Probably on the Lewis River.
Cordwood?
Yeah, cordwood.
Never heard of cordwood.
I have to admit, I haven't either. I see. It's just wood piled or sold in cords, as in tied together.
Oh, I see. Not my preferred fabric for clothing.
No, I think if you were to give me a piece of clothing made out of wood, I'd be pretty miffed. Not gonna lie. Wood underpants, for example. Don't get them in a knot.
Speaking of, here we go. First weird tangent of the day. I was in a class yesterday on campus for real estate law.
You were never.
And I really was. And we were talking about the various forms of surveying and checks that need to be done before buying a house, buying land, and there's this incredibly ridiculous sort of extensive list of things that you want to check, and it came up in conversation that there's lots of sort of safety searches too, and we were going through the various names of these checks and surveys and where you find the forms and who you send the forms to and how to fill them out and blah blah blah, and we were talking about asbestos, and it reminded me of, and now which king was it?
There are so many directions you can go with this, Dan, that I have no clue.
There was a famous king. Hang on. Basically, I'll look up the king in a minute. But he had a coat made of asbestos.
Oh.
And the party trick that he would do is through dining on an evening, he would soil this coat more and more with wine and food and mud and God knows what else. And then toward the end of the evening, to clean it, he would remove the coat and throw it in a fire.
Oh, and of course, because it's a fire retardant.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it might have been Charlemagne.
Yes, I think you're right. Yes, it was Charlemagne.
Just give me a quick Google. Wow.
which is just terrifying.
Oh no! No, that's interesting. There's he had a tablecloth made out of asbestos, and there was a Han Dynasty general in China who had a asbestos dinner jacket. Wow.
Well, there we are.
Oh, that's interesting. Nobles were cremated in asbestos shrouds, so their ashes would not mix with the cinders of the fire.
Interesting.
Wow. That's kind of... You're just being cooked at that point. You're not really burning.
Sauteed nobleman.
And also, I was looking up clothes made out of wood. How ridiculous. It turns out there is actually a company called Wild, spelt W-I-J-L-D, that makes clothes out of wood pulp. And they just look like regular clothes. They don't look like,
like clogs.
Yeah. The clothing version of clogs.
Yeah.
I quite like clogs. I'd love to have a good pair of clogs.
Absolutely.
I don't know when I would wear them, but there's something satisfying about having a totally rigid set of footwear.
When I lived in the Netherlands at the British school in the Netherlands, you would be given, when you left the school, you would be given a wooden clog that your classmates would all sign, and inside the clog was sort of filled with sort of Dutch mementos and things. Which is quite sweet.
So going back to this boat, because I actually do want to learn a bit more about this. I am interested about this. So it was this prime example of a jobbing boat, and it was in operation from 1890 to 1911, which was apparently a relatively long time for a vessel of its type, built entirely out of wood, foreshadowing for it burning down in 1911.
Yeah.
Although Mascot was profitable, it had a series of sinkings and other accidents that gave it the reputation as a hoodoo boat, that is, a jinxed vessel.
Oh, right.
Much of this reputation was simply newspaper derision, but there were also several fatal incidents, including at least 2 apparent suicides or attempted suicides and 2 instances of fatalities to crew members. It was a cursed boat, Dan.
I see.
And looking on the inside, this is a really cool art. Like, this is a little nugget of US history that's just sort of. I can guarantee there'll be a couple of people who found out about this and just made it their mission to document everything to do with this boat and get it on Wikipedia. Like, it's just one. It gives me those vibes for sure. Like a historical reenactment society would, make it their mission to find everything that they could possibly find out about this. It's very.
So it was the sort of the steam, but it was a steamboat, you were saying?
Yeah, steam. So it had a wheel at the back, like a paddle wheel.
So it's the sort of steamboat equivalent of the Mary Celeste. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, except it wasn't abandoned. They kept, even though they knew it was. Well, okay, they didn't know it was cursed, but you know what I mean. Like they kept using it.
Weird.
And then here we go. Oh, okay. Historical remembrance. Captain Walter C. Monocle. Captain Walter C. Monocle here, see, who had been a waiter on the Mascot at the age of 15 in the early 1890s, became the master of the Veteran Steamboatmen Association in 1943. And presumably that's where like a lot of this has come from. Like, it was like, I remember that boat. And a monument, including a one-dimensional steel model of Mascot, was set up in Woodland in 2009. A one-dimensional model is a line. You mean a two-dimensional model.
Right.
A one-dimensional model. It's literally just a line. It's how long something is. Unless that is what it is, and I'm just being derisive. Oh, here we go. It has its own website, lewisriver.com/mascot. Not loading very quickly. Don't know if that's actually still a website. And there's a kerosene lantern from the Mascot in the collection of North Clark County Historical Museum in Washington. Bless you. Have you got a cold, Dan?
Thank you. Yeah, I've got a bit of a cold. It's not great. I'm trying not to hack and wheeze through this podcast, but it's a bit of a struggle. But go on, the model.
Oh no, I haven't been able to find out anything else. I think that's a mistake. I think they mean it's a two-dimensional model.
But don't go on, not the model.
This is great. This article is one of my favourites we've ever had. There's like a great picture, a posed photograph on 1900, they think, of the crew and the officers, and they're all wearing like, well, I assume the officers are the ones wearing like these kind of bowler hats, and all the people who would work in the engine room have got like flat caps and moustaches. And half of them are chomping cigars. This is good. There's 2 guys who are having a very intimate moment. It appears as if they're lighting cigars off of one another.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. This
Beautiful.
I am bamboozled. I love that this is so detailed. And if you ask me any question, I could probably get you the answer to it. But
Yeah.
I'm a bit confused as to why.
Have you ever been on a steamboat?
I assume I must have done. It's the kind of thing that you would do as a kid, surely. Your parents would take you and...
On a holiday or something?
Yeah. And because you've been an agreeable boy, they would let you go see the steamships. Sorry, that's a meme.
You've been an agreeable boy, Simon.
Oh,
Mother and I bought you 2 tickets to the steamboat. Come on now.
Can I have my ice?
We've bought you this memento. It's a one-dimensional model. It's a line, Papa. It's a line.
I do regret giving you those geometry classes at such a young age.
Incredible. I don't know whether I've ever been on a steamboat.
It's not the kind of thing that comes up every day, you know.
Although, actually, I say that. I think it's exactly the kind of thing I would have done when we were sort of visiting family in Yorkshire or something, going up the river.
Yeah, if you were going to the Lake District or something. I mean hang on, steamboats in the UK. How many of them even... Oh, God, there's quite a few. Oh, no, these are all historical ones. This is a big Wikipedia article. There's a lot of steamships that have existed within the UK at some point. I wonder if there's a HMS or an... Oh, no, because it'd be SS. It'd be steamship, wouldn't it? Is there an SS Daniel? Have a quick look.
I hope so.
No.
But that might deliver the wrong results. You might not be looking at steamboats. You may be looking at a particularly corduroy-clad member of the of a Second World War.
I'm looking at the page, and that you'd be somewhere between the MV Daronia. That's not even a steamship. That's an oil tanker. Or the Davara, a steam fishing trawler. I'm afraid that there is no Daniel.
That's sad.
Is there an Exeter?
What about Moor?
Moor. Let's have a look. The Great Moor. Macclesfield. Malakand. There's 2 Malakands, actually. Malmo, Hyrithian. Maori, Marietta. No.
Apparently there was a famous fleet. There was a fleet of 4 Imperial 1-class Star Destroyers by Grand Moff Wilhuf Tarkin, which was called the Moor Fleet, to guard Moor installation under the command of Admiral Dala.
With the Emperor Palpatine Surgical Reconstruction Center.
Yeah, the ships included were the Gorgon, the Basilisk, the Hydra, and the Manticore, and 2 Crusader-class corvettes.
Who were called Frank and Dave.
Wikipedia. Thank you so much.
Never in human history has so much effort gone into something that matters so little.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, good grief. But I feel like I haven't done this justice. This article. I want to get, but like it's a bloody boat. It's a. I mean, just the. Let me read you the section titles so you can get an idea of what I'm looking at right now. You've got construction, dimensions, engineering, route, early career, operations in the later 1890s, snag problems on the Lewis River, hoodoo boat, low
snag problems, as in sausages,
sinking. I think they mean they hit some snags.
Sausages, Simon.
Sausages.
Walls.
Snag problems, hoodoo boat, low water on the rivers, later business rivals, ice on the river, deckhand drowned, later history of the first Mascot, reconstruction, service on the upper Willamette River, labour economics, disposition, and historical remembrance.
A lot of those could be album titles.
Labour economics, yeah. That's got to be it.
There was one about something. Was there a drowning?
Yeah, Deckhand Drowned. That's a heavy metal album.
Deckhand Drowned sounds like a bluegrass single. It's got a big sort of banjo introduction. Well, got a deckhand drowned.
I was a sternwheeler boat on the Mississippi River. My deckhand drowned and then I burned down, but then I got rebuilt and then my wife left me.
Absolutely. And then because it's a bluegrass country western song, you've got to sing about a dog dying.
Yeah.
You got to sing about how much you love your pickup truck.
Yep. Get Jesus in
amongst
there.
other things.
Absolutely. Just,
absolutely.
Liberal coating of butter like Jesus all over that song. How are you, Dan?
I'm all right. I'm all right. I've got a horrible cold, and it's very frustrating. And I am constantly looking at BBC News at the frankly terrifying and dreadful situation currently unfolding in the Ukraine. Which is just horrific. I mean, at time of recording, I think, Simon and I were mentioning before we started, we do want to, we don't want to linger on it too much, because I'm sure we're all too far aware of what's going on. But our thoughts and prayers and sympathies go out to anybody in Ukraine. In fact, I was looking last night on our podcast sort of analytics, and we do actually have listeners in the Ukraine. So I do hope that you're keeping as safe as you can. And
please do stay safe. And it's, I mean, at the time of recording, the latest news is that Russian forces on the edge of Kiev, and that, it's something that we can, that all that we can do at this point is, as individuals, is kind of watch aghast and just hope that people stay safe.
Yeah.
But in other momentous news that is also depressing, you're a year older, Dan.
I am. I'm 25 years old.
A quarter century.
Which is crazy.
Did you do anything fun for your birthday?
I spent the entire day working because I was very, very busy. And then I spent the evening in 3 different pubs, and it was great.
And when were we supposed to record this episode, Dan?
Well, look, I mean, we can argue to and fro about,
Was it the morning after
formalities
you went to the pub?
Well, I mean, what really is the morning after, Simon? I think life is a journey, isn't it? And I think it's important that we don't sort of separate and impose ridiculous. Yeah, okay, right, okay. So we were meant to record it on Tuesday morning after my 25th birthday. But at the time that I woke up and sort of shrieked to myself at how dreadful I felt, and then my phone buzzed, and
Your
Simon
eyes pop
said,
open and just a bit of banshee.
Simon said, "Ready when you are," and I went, "No, I don't think you will be." So yes, we're recording a couple of days later instead.
Which is fine. But
that's all right.
A birthday present
that's
to you,
fine.
Dan. It's my way of saying happy birthday. Have a nice lie-in. We'll do this later.
Awfully good of you. Oh, I've just had a message from the NHS asking if I would like
saying you're old, lol.
A flu vaccination.
Is 25 the limit that you get that? I don't think I've ever had a flu.
Open to all patients who want one and are over the age of 18 while stocks last.
Oh, okay.
Well,
I was going to say 25 would seem like a very odd time to I don't know, to get on the flu. I always think of that as something that is for middle-aged people, really.
Apparently they messaged me on the 2nd of February, but that clearly just went unnoticed. I was clearly doing something.
Quite possible. Well, the thing is, Dad, you're so lazy. You just do so little. I don't know how you could possibly miss a single message.
If anything, I've got too much time on my hands. I'm feeling lethargic and exhausted because I've got nothing to do. It's got absolutely nothing to do with the fact that the sheer amount of things I'm trying to juggle at the moment are meaning that I'm starting to burn out slightly. It can't be that. It just can't be.
No, don't be silly.
No, ridiculous.
Well, speaking of not being silly, do you have a sillily good recommend? It's not a transition that works. What's your core piece of the week, Dan?
And this will be my piece of the week. Drumroll, please. Well, once again, I'm going to sort of depart from the sort of the standard and the norm. And
that means cheating. That's like Russian athletes. Oh God, I can't say that. it's like athletes saying we've somewhat departed from the norm of the sport, and what other people are saying, you've blood doped. That's what you've done.
Yeah,
you're cheating.
I was recommended some listening, and in fairness, it was a piece that I haven't heard for a long time, and it was wonderful to listen to just to sort of escape for a bit. Given everything that's sort of going on at the moment, and just feeling overwhelmed in every sense of the word. So there are voices in this, but it's a symphony. And it's Vaughan Williams' A Sea Symphony.
Oh yeah,
which is just fantastic.
I do like Vaughan Williams' stuff. He wrote some really, really good stuff.
It's wonderful. Yeah, if you haven't come across Vaughan Williams, he's fascinating, and I really urge you to do so. But my piece of the week, let's say, is going to be Vaughan Williams' A Sea Symphony. Just get a good set of headphones, sit down with a drink in a dark room, and just let it literally wash over you, because it's just wonderful.
I just feel, I know I've said this several times on the show before, but I do feel like I struggle to find new music that I can experience in that way. I think so much of when I'm experiencing new music is very surface level. Like to actually find a piece that you can just sort of sit and, as you say, sort of get into a dark room, get a good pair of headphones and just luxuriate in it. Like it's I don't know if this is just the way that our society works and in how we treat music as something that is increasingly kind of frivolous. It's something you just have on in the background. You know, it's never this focus of attention unless you're going to a gig.
I think it's a skill and a rarity to actually really sort of truly actively listen. You know, just not just sort of listen to something because so for instance, I've been really enjoying listening back to old sort of classic tracks that have been recently sort of updated on streaming services with Dolby Atmos. And so like very, very high quality streams, and putting a pair of headphones on and really listening to the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's album, for instance, or going back and listening to Queen Greatest Hits, but on a really high quality, and just listening to the amount of detail in there is incredible. And the same is true of I think classical music too. The more you listen, I'm a big fan of listening to, I don't know whether you've listened to Vivaldi's Four Seasons recomposed by Max Richter.
Yeah.
Which is great, and that's a wonderful one to really just sit down and properly listen to, because it gets, especially spring. You've got these sort of, you've got sort of strings in canon almost, if you like, and there's the most sort of wonderful trance-like effect.
And there's actually a version that I discovered relatively recently on a similar vein. Which is the cello suite, but the Bach suites for solo cello, recomposed by Peter Gregson, and that's for multiple cellos and a synthesizer, I think.
Ooh, that sounds good.
And it's really good. In the same way that I was explicitly looking for something that was like the Max Richter Vivaldi, because I've listened to that quite a lot, and it's one of those things that I would quite frequently have on in the background whilst I'm working.
Who did you say was that again?
By Peter Gregson. It's on Spotify. I'm not sure if it'll be on Apple Music. I assume it is. And that's all 6 cello suites. I mean, and I love...
Oh, yeah, I've got it.
I really know, because I played it myself, the first suite, and I adore the 6th suite. The stuff in the middle is a bit more take it or leave it, frankly. The 3rd suite's fun. But the 6th suite in particular is a personal favourite. So that if I'm recommending something now, I'd recommend that, really.
Amazing. Oh, well, I'm adding that to my library. I'm going to listen to that later today, I think.
Tell you what, actually, I mean, this is... sorry, let's actually jump into Critics' Corner, because this is definitely more a Critics' Corner thing. So, continuing that sort of music discussion, I have recently... Well, there's 2 things I've been listening to a lot of on Spotify. One of which is I never really lost them, but I've reappreciated. I'm not rediscovered. I've reappreciated Gorillaz, and because I can't remember what sparked it, but I think I was talking to somebody about the albums that defined our teenage years, and for me, Demon Days by Gorillaz was absolutely that album. I listened to it so many times, to the point where I still know the track numbers for the best tracks, because it was on a CD player, so you'd have to learn the numbers, and it just sort of got me thinking of I should listen to them again. And then there's so much stuff they've put out since, and I guess I just sort of lost touch with them a little bit. But God, the quality of what they've done is astonishing. It's so varied and so good. If that's my kind of like teenage album, what albums do you think would sort of define your teenage experience?
Ooh, what a question. I have incredibly fond memories. So if I was working back, my late teens, but while I was at school, not at university. So I would have been, 16, 17. I have very, very vivid memories of holidaying with the family I was staying with in Australia, up near Port Douglas, which is on the sort of...
It's near Ayers Rock.
Eastern, no, it's northeastern coast, up from Cairns. It's beautiful. And I would listen to a lot of Bastille.
Oh, okay.
And got sort of very, very into that. In fact, so much so that I heard them live later that year, which would have been 2013. 2013.
Is Bastille? What was their big track? Was that Pompeii?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
And then, oh gosh, it's hard. I listened to I had quite an eclectic mix.
I think it's easier, possibly for my generation, because it wasn't on streaming services. It was all on CDs. It was actually all.
Well,
on
you had
discs.
to go to music halls, didn't you?
Yeah. You had to wait for them
in your day.
You had to wait for them to actually come through. We hadn't invented permanent music recording by my teenage years. It was
music as a sort of concept was relatively new. I think I'm right in saying you were actually sort of one of the foremost pioneers of
the bone flute,
the sort of concept.
Yeah, I was the person that introduced the bone flute into the Western canon.
I thought you said you were the skin flute.
No, that was a separate thing. That wasn't music.
That wasn't me. Oh, sorry.
I was also a pioneer, but we can't really talk about that one on the pod.
No. But that's for the separate podcast that's released on our OnlyFans. If you'd like to check out the
Only Dan's.
Only Dan's.
It's just Dan talking to himself in a room for an hour.
Yeah. To anybody else? No, only Dan's. All right. Okay.
I'm going through my Spotify now. I'm trying to sort of pick out the albums because I know it wasn't just Gorillaz. And it's impossible to sort of pin it down to just one album. Stadium Arcadium by Red Hot Chili Peppers. That was another one that I listened to a lot, and I had the double side.
I listened to quite a lot of Red Hot Chili Peppers. Actually, I listened to a lot of Chili Peppers, a lot of Snow Patrol, quite a lot of Keane.
Keane. That's a name I've not heard in a while.
Squeeze. Remember Squeeze?
No.
Squeeze. So Squeeze was definitely like before my time, but my mother's got a really outstanding sort of musical knowledge, sort of pop music and things.
I mean, I suppose I'm also saying this in the sense of the thing, because I think there's a difference between music listened to when you're a kid, because that's basically the music of your parents. You grew up in the sonic environment that your parents curate for you, and
exactly.
For me, that was it was Queen, it was Meatloaf, ABBA, quite a bit of classical stuff as well, especially from my mum's side. But it was a lot of that sort of 70s and 80s rock. And then when you're a teenager, you're like, yeah, screw you, mum and dad. I'm going to start listening to slightly different music that's largely the same. And it's kind of just a logical continuation. So, like that's where Gorillaz and Red Hot Chili Peppers and Green Day. I don't think I actually ever owned American Idiot, because that was the album when I was a kid, I remember.
I wasn't a huge Green Day person, I must admit.
Really?
I enjoy their stuff. I enjoy the stuff now, but I didn't listen to it sort of at the time.
I think it was a bit too cool for me. I remember my friend John had the American Idiot hoodie. He had like the hand holding the grenade, the heart grenade.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, I'd never be able to wear that. That's too cool. Like what my parents say. I was so worried about disappointing them. Like I couldn't go out and buy the album or anything. That'd be too much.
Yeah.
But it's so that's sort of been a musical discovery or rediscovery recently.
Yeah.
The other thing, which is sort of a general public service announcement that I'd like to sort of put out there, is recently I've been listening to, whilst working, I've sort of been trying to find new working music, and I found that the composer for Kurzgesagt videos, Epic Mountain, is on Spotify. So all of the soundtracks to Kurzgesagt in a nutshell videos are on Spotify. And they're really good, sort of chill, kind of synthy, poppy kind of, but definitely designed to be background music. And they're perfect for working to. So I'll leave a link to that in the show notes. I really, really rate them. And it's good music. Like I'd love to be in a position where I could pay somebody to write music for my videos.
Absolutely.
It's just so expensive. It's like it can run into like hundreds of pounds for every minute that you get someone's composed. Well, rightly, because it's. It's a skill.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's sort of been. I'm trying to think. Oh no, I have another big discovery. But I will let you, Dan. What have you been listening to, playing, watching, reading, enjoying recently?
What have I been doing? To be honest,
you've not had time.
I really haven't been. I've hardly been watching anything. I listen to podcasts constantly, and I sort of keep on a loop of sort of fairly sort of similar things. As far as I don't watch terrestrial television anymore, I haven't really seen anything. I've recently been back through and watched all 4 Shrek films,
Oh wow.
which has been great fun, with a friend of mine. And I think the next thing that we're going to watch, we want to do the Spy Kids films again, which I think is exciting.
Fun. Okay. Yeah. I remember.
Yeah.
I've seen 1 and 2. They did. Oh no, they did 3D as well, didn't they? Or was that?
Yeah, and then they did a 4th one which had different kids in, but then used as a cameo the kids from the first sort of trilogy later on, because they'd grown up, because that's what happens to people.
Yeah. They get older, Dan.
They do, don't they? Don't they just?
I am inevitable.
So yeah.
So the thing that I have been, and I actually finished, I was introduced to this and finished it within a couple of days, was The Legend of Vox Machina. So this is the first Critical Role Dungeons and Dragons campaign that sort of exploded and became like this huge D&D thing, and they've now done multiple campaigns since. They did a Kickstarter, I think 2 years ago now, I want to say. And it was, I think, the most popular Kickstarter of all time. They raised, I think, about $8 million. It might have been $11 million. It was nuts. And all that they wanted originally was, we want to do like an animated special of, a hitherto unseen adventure that our characters went on. And people liked that idea so much that they then got the budget to do a 12 episode series, all animated. And it's basically an anime. It's D&D done as an anime and with professional voice actors, including the people who play in Critical Role, and they're all professional voice actors, but also including some incredible guest talent, like David Tennant is a voice in it.
Oh, great.
No, not Rory McGrath. He's a comedian. The guy who plays the Hound in Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah,
he's in it. Stephanie Beatrice from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, she's in it. Like, it's the actual production level is really, really high. And I was introduced to it by my friend Emily Bates, who plays Infinity in the RP Geeks campaign that we do on Wednesdays on Twitch. If you're not aware, by the way, I do a D&D campaign where I'm playing a cybernetically enhanced monk who, in 5e rules, we're classing as a dwarf monk. But Emily, when I was staying over at hers for a gig, she showed me the first couple of episodes, and I'm not an anime fan, like, at all. I tried anime before and I just didn't really enjoy it, but there was something about this, and I think it was the storytelling really that just really sucked me in. And I finished the entire series to the point where I was on a train on mobile data, desperately trying to get enough data to finish the episode, like the last episode. And I would highly recommend it if people like D&D, if people like that sort of fantasy storytelling. It's a hard recommendation from me. I really enjoyed it in a way that I did not expect to at all. And now I'm desperately waiting for the second season to eventually be announced. I mean, are you an anime fan? I don't think we've ever really talked about anime.
I've watched bits. I'm a big fan of I quite enjoy the art style. I don't think I've really... I had a friend at school, and he got me into Cowboy Bebop.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which was really good. And then what's the food one?
A food anime?
Yeah, it's a food anime.
A lot of Studio Ghibli films have a lot of food in, but I can't think of an anime.
Okay, so it'll be here, as I say. It's a bit of there's a Vice article about it. And the Vice article is titled, "I Can't Stop Watching This Weirdly Sexual Cooking-Themed Anime." Hang on, have you ever... Yes, all right. Vice, give me the name.
Give me the wretched name.
Food Wars.
Food Wars.
Yeah, it's weird. It's really weird. I've watched maybe sort of 5 or 6 episodes of it. And it's it's not... Yeah, no, it's weird. It's just weird.
Yeah, I have, like, having that description of it, I can, in the abstract, understand what it is, but I have no clue how you fit those different topics together of it's anime and it's food and it's sexual. Like, if you could remove one of those things, it could make sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's very sexual. It's weird. Oh, and Death Note. Yeah, I've watched a bit of Death Note.
Oh, okay. What did you think of that?
Yeah, pretty good actually. I mean, I like, once you get over the sort of the style of the form, I guess, it's not terrible. I spent a while with my old housemate and we watched the entirety of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
I've heard some really, really good things about Avatar.
Yeah, and actually it's great. It's really good. You get some sort of like, especially later on, you get some real sort of filler for like episode after episode. It's just sort of like, nothing really happens. But it's good. I've been trying, somebody's been telling, I mean, this isn't anime, I appreciate, but as far as animated series go, people have been urging me to watch the Clone Wars series.
Is that Michael Graham has been telling you to do that?
That is Michael Graham, yeah.
No, I've heard this too, because it's not Tarkovsky. What's the name? The director of it is like the style is, it's very stylized. It's not your normal animation sort of. It's not Disney basically. So I'd be curious to watch it. The other thing which I've been told, and I'm sure we'll get some angry people in the Discord telling me, join the Discord if people haven't, by the way, if you're listening, is I haven't watched Arcane, and I like having now given Vox Machina a go and really enjoyed that. And sort of push that boundary of the stuff that I'm watching. I think I will do Arcane next because I've heard so many good things about it. Yeah, like I need to get out of this rut of just watching Star Trek, and I think Vox Machina has just pulled me out and been like, look, there's other things on Netflix. You could watch other things, and I'm like, oh, I don't know. I could just watch another 40 minutes of largely predictable sci-fi. So, yeah,
exactly. And we find ourselves again in Patreon Corner, that time in the podcast where we say an enormous thank you to those who support us on Patreon. Simon, what is Patreon?
A Patreon is the method by which the show functions. It pays for our wonderful editor, Fergus. If you want to learn more about Fergus, by the way, his website is actually linked now in the description. So if you want to get him to do some editing for you, please do. Steal him from us. Steal him away.
Absolutely.
But yeah, basically, patreon.com/the Wikicast is what pays for Fergus to edit our show. It pays for our hosting. And there's a little bit left over every month, which we have been putting aside, and we're all going to spaff on an eventual video when Dan has time and he can come up and do some filming with me, which hopefully will be easier in the next not very long, and for reasons that I cannot say on the podcast, but I need to talk to you. Well, actually, you know the reason, Dan.
I do,
and it's very exciting. But yes, hopefully
very exciting.
Hopefully, it'll be a bit easier going forwards. But yes, that is what a Patreon is.
Patreon. It's like if well, I say if. This podcast is a sort of single cell organism. It's not particularly
in brain power. Yes.
Yeah. So consider Patreon the sort of the mitochondria. It's our powerhouse.
Oh God, he's good.
And I, you've got our two hosts here. I don't know which one of us wants to be our rough or smooth endoplasmic reticulum, but whichever one wants to deal with the production of lipids, I think.
That we both know that's me, Dan. I have more than enough lipids to go around.
Marvellous.
Well, I would like to thank some of the people who support us, and specifically those who support us at the top cat level. So these are people who pledge $5 a month, and they are recognised as being fans of the superior choice of household pet. I would like to thank Will Jenice Humphreys, Simon P., Rents Kirk, Princess Andromeda, Omar Miranda, Oliver Craigie, Oliver Burkhart, Nathan Flaherty, Nathi Iftikhar, Matt Maguire, Lewis Watson, Layla Medina, Jack Easton, Izzy CC, Isabella Strowski, Easy, Dan Hanvey, Dame Valerie III, Colm Mansfield, Choco Cat, Ben Dent, Andy Hartley, and Abu El Ella, the physics boy.
And I would like to say an amazing thank you to our top dogs, and they are Jay Wright, Ben McMurtry, Peter Reed, Colin J. Brown, Alistair Fortune, Eve Sharples, Lexi at Front Desk, Hasse Hansen, Aaron Jorgensen, Henry VII, King of England and of France, Lord of Ireland, Sam Harvey, Naf Laroche, Andrian with an N, Chan,
he's nailed it,
Ben Caples, Josh Shiaga, Martin Narciso, Christian from the Alps, Amy Bonney, and Lexi at Front Desk's boss.
Oh no!
We have a new.
Lexi, you've been rumbled.
In fact, it was 3 days ago. In fact, Lexi at Front Desk boss. Welcome to the fold.
Stop spying on your employees. Top lad. So we've So we find ourselves in Correspondence Corner, and we have a couple of emails to read out to you. And then, as long foretold, we are going to be reading out the third chapter, I believe, in one of our fan fictions that's been written very kindly for us by a member of the community. So stick around for that. I do have an email here in front of me, however, from Eric Christensen, titled IBM 1940. So Eric writes, Dear Dan and Dr. Clark, I just up saying my own name.
Well done.
How?
Well done.
Dear Dan and Dr. Clark.
You're killing it, Queen. Well done.
God, I'm tired. I'm so tired. Dear Dan and Dr. Clark, parentheses, author. I am writing to you from Alaska. It's Eric from Alaska, Dan. Mm-hmm. How could we forget? I'm writing to you from Alaska to let you know about a not-so-fun fact about IBM. In your most recent episode, you were discussing when IBM was founded as one of the events you had to place on the timeline. This caught my attention since I recently read an article by Edwin Black, link below, on the cooperation of IBM with Nazi Germany.
Oh, no.
It's both shocking to see how a company like IBM has been complicit in such horrible things and continue to be one of the most influential of the sector. And at the same time, it's interesting to see what the company did before the modern computer. That's really because I mean, Eric says maybe don't read this out on air, but I think that's. I
mean, it is really interesting.
It's really interesting, and I think it's worth pointing this out that there are so many companies like this who are just in plain sight who have really problematic pasts, and especially links with World War II. And I imagine after the current conflict, we're going to see a similar thing of a lot of companies that have had links to the Russian state and Russian military who are just going to carry on and, won't make a big deal about it, but they're there. And it's a really an interesting example of how messy and complicated trying to live an ethical existence is, because are you being ethical by supporting a company that collaborated with the Nazi regime? Where do you draw that line? It's basically The Good Place season 3. It's really interesting, and thank you, Eric, for bringing this in, because it is really, really interesting. He does, however, sign off by saying, my next email will hopefully be a bit more cheerful. Keep up the amazing work. Eric Christensen, host of the Wikicast Fake, that's the Swedish Wikicast, and signs off with being 0.1812363 Queen Elizabeth's old.
Brilliant.
That's a great metric.
Absolutely brilliant.
Love that.
Well done.
Can we make that our standard metric of time?
Queen Elizabeth's.
Yeah, Queen Elizabeth's. So she is 95? 95.
Is she 95? I thought she was older.
No, 95 apparently. She was born in April. She was born in April 1926. So the Roman Empire, for example, lasted from oh god, I can do that maths in my head. That is 501 years. So 501 divided by 95 is so the Roman Empire lasted for about 5.27 Queen Elizabeths.
Amazing.
Actually, when you put it in those terms, isn't that mental? That's actually crazy.
That's incredible.
Wow.
Okay, yeah, we're going to formally adopt the standard measurement of time for the Wikicast and all that lies therein as Queen Elizabeth's.
Abbreviated to QE.
Yeah.
So
we've had AD, we've got BC, AD,
and QE.
QE.
So you, Dan, you at the now age of 25, you are 0.263 QEs.
Amazing.
So you're not 0.26, whereas I am a mighty 0.326 QEs.
Wow. Amazing. We have an email here from Charlie. And Charlie says, Dear Messrs. Clark and Moore, long-time writer, first-time reader here. Wait, that doesn't sound right. Apologies if this email is a bit doom and gloom, but here we are. Anyways, I'm a second-year physics with astrophysics student studying at the University of York, and it's fair to say that Simon was a factor in me coming to university. I've always been interested in science and space, but never thought of formally studying it until watching the PhD vlogs, so thank you.
Oh.
With the fanboying out of the way, I'm actually after some advice, as you've both been to uni and may be able to help. It's been apparent that since the start of the academic year, my mathematical literacy isn't on par with the rest of my peers. Maybe it's due to COVID, maybe it's me. Regardless, I'm starting to feel my degree slip out of my hands. With third and fourth year to come, I hate to think of my grade at the end of it. I suppose I have two questions. One, mainly for Simon, what resources and advice do you have on building mathematical knowledge to succeed in physics, as I have no trouble grasping concepts and being curious enough to ask the right questions? So that's your first question, Simon.
Okay.
What resources would you advise on building mathematical knowledge?
So there are fantastic textbooks out there on very particular topics at that level. So grad div curl and all that is a good example of a textbook that's all about vector calculus. And depending on sort of the level that you're at in physics, but you will eventually run into vector calculus. That's a really good one. There is another one. I think it's called like Everything You Wanted to Know About Calculus, but We're Too Afraid to Ask. That's another good one that I used a little bit because when I started out, I felt like my math skills weren't really good enough compared to my peers. So there are specific textbooks that you can use. What I would suggest is basically doing a bit of research for particular topics, because there will be something specific to the level that you're at and the topic that you're looking at, and take those out and do a bit of self-directed study, which is something that I didn't do, and I was nowhere near self-directed enough. So this is me telling you to go and self-direct yourself, basically. But you can then also supplement that with online resources. So there's a bunch of free stuff that is out there for pretty much any individual topic that you might be struggling on. I will also say that, full disclosure, I have been sponsored by them and several times, and I genuinely think they're a very good service. Brilliant.org has a bunch of resources at that level of maths that I think are really useful in getting to grips with the fundamentals, and then you can build on top of it with other stuff. But I think, as with anything, try to attack it from a couple of angles. So have the textbook stuff, use the online stuff, but be specific. And remember that, especially when Googling, there is no such thing as a stupid question. If you think there's something you don't fully understand, Google it just to be sure, and take it from there.
Absolutely. And this followed up with a second question, which is directed towards the two of us, really. Mm-hmm. And the question is, does a bad year / couple of terms make or break a degree? I have 2.5 years left as I'm doing a master's, which seems like a long time until I realise I've been doing this for almost 2 years already. What I would say is that, there are resources available to you and documentation that will give you an indication of the weighting for certain modules and certain years through the course of whether it's just an undergraduate degree or an integrated master's. I would say that provided that you feel able to sort of turn things around, I wouldn't have thought that it would make or break. I mean, obviously, the weighting for I'm coming at things from an arts and humanities perspective, which will obviously be different to sort of STEM. But something that you might be able to do is reach out to, student and academic support available to you at the University of York, and perhaps say, like, look, I'm enjoying the course, and I'm having no trouble, as you say, grasping concepts and being curious enough to ask the right questions, but I'm feeling that I'm struggling mathematically. There might be fourth years or postgraduate students who are offering some form of tutor scheme, where you'd be able to get in contact with them and maybe do a couple of 1 or maybe 2 extra sessions a week just to pick your maths up when you've been applying the sort of advice that Simon's given too, I'm sure. But basically, I wouldn't try and let you say that you have 2.5 years left, but you realise that you've been doing it for 2 years already. Don't feel like you're ever stuck in a situation that you can't change, because you can always change a situation, and it might mean, it might be a little bit complicated to change, but you're never sort of without options. You don't want to feel like you're being pushed and backed into a corner.
Yeah, I don't think I can really add very much to that, really. I think Dan's hit the nail on the head. I will say for sure that just to echo what Dan said, a couple of bad terms does not a bad degree make. Yeah. There's always the potential to turn things around, and I think that to believe otherwise is a very dangerous mindset, because I think it allows you to give up. And there is no situation. This is a quote from, I don't think we actually talked about this on the show, but Desmond Tutu passed away quite recently, and he had there was this interview that he gave that's been seared into my brain, and there was one of these things that he said about when asked, what about the situation in South Africa with apartheid ending do you want the world to take to heart? And there's this quote that he said about how that there is no situation that is absolutely totally devoid of hope. There is nothing that is not transfigurable, because that's what people said about South Africa, and that it doesn't matter how bad things seem now, they can always get better, and there is always a time to make those changes. So don't despair, and as Dan says, look for the helpers, to quote Mr. Rogers, and there is always a way out of this and for things to improve. I have one more email here, which is somewhat self-serving, but you'll see why in a second, Dan. It's from Jack Easton, noted patron of the show, and he writes, "Dear Messrs. Clark and Moore, during my recent visit to Oxford for the 2022 Cats Ball," which is not what, maybe it's the ball at St. Catherine's College. Unfortunately, it's not a ball for cats, which would be amazing. But he does say, it was incredible. I add, I happened upon a most interesting discovery within the grounds of St. Catherine's. A room. What could be so interesting about a room, I hear you cry? Well, it wasn't just any old room. It was, in fact, the Simon Clark room. And he says evidence attached, but unfortunately there is nothing on the email. But I have seen the picture on the Discord. And there apparently is, and it's spelled the same. There's no E on Clark. It is the Simon Clark room in an Oxford college. And I have no idea which Simon Clark it is in reference to, because there are a few of us, but most of the other ones have E's on their names.
Yeah.
So I do not know what the story is here, and I might have to find out. Jack does say, as amazing as it might be to have your own room, Simon, alas, I don't believe this one is for you. But this brings me on to my query. Simon, and also Dan, what would your feelings be towards the prospect of having a room or something named after yourselves within a university? Or really anywhere? I mean, I feel let's limit this to university. If you could have an area named after you, Dan, what would you want to have named after you?
Well, I think rather than thinking what I'd like to have named after me, I'd want to be absolutely sure of the circumstance by which something is being named after me. I hope it's a positive thing, you know.
The Daniel Moore for student room for student mental health breakdowns.
Yeah, you know, or you know, just I'd hope for it to be a positive thing. I don't know, something like being having done English and classics and lots of reading. I think a library would be really lovely to have a library named after me, or sort of like something akin to a common room space for winding down. You know, would be lovely. But I don't think I would be particularly averse to it being named after me. What about you?
I don't know. I like the idea of having something named after me that people have a definite personal connection to. Like, in the way that we, for example, we have a real connection to the chapel on Exeter campus, yes. And that's the Mary Harris Memorial Chapel. And whenever I hear that name, I think of positive things.
Yes.
So it would be nice to have something that has that elicits that feeling of people think of this place and go, oh, it's my happy place, it's my safe place. So maybe a bar, or I don't know. I mean, a library is too obvious. I'll let you have the library on camp in Wikicast University. That could be the Dan Moore Memorial Library. RIP.
Why don't you inquire when the chapel gets a new organ? Why don't you have the Simon Clark organ. 8-foot flute?
It's the Simon Clark organ. I thought, I absolutely that. I can totally get involved with that.
Amazing. And as alluded to earlier, very, very exciting. We are going to resume the wonderful fan fiction, The Podcast Trials and Interactive Adventure, written by Cameron. We've been meaning to come back to this for some time.
Quite a while.
But I can't wait. I think, if I'm right in saying, Simon, we're now into chapter 3.
We're into chapter 3, and I believe the story so far is, and I definitely didn't have to look this up just before recording this bit, that we were basically engaged in a trial devised by Tim Cook in order to get our podcast to the top of the charts. That was the setup, and in the last episode, we went back to caveman times, and I had to prove my expertise in atmospheric stuff, which I failed miserably to do. and then we were teleported and whisked away. I think if I go to the end of chapter 2, I believe we were teleported away somewhere, and that was it. We deleted Machu Picchu from history.
Yes. Of course we did.
Yeah, that was what we did.
Don't we all?
The end of the last chapter was, this one's for you, Dan. I hope you know your cathedrals, because world number 2 is based on a book that's all about them. A shame, too. We've just spent an hour discussing the weather, and now we've got to go to church. Well, that's the Wikicast for you. So
Interesting.
That's where we're at, basically. And
Okay.
Cameron has requested that I read out and narrate this one. So, but the thing to remember, folks listening at home, is that this is an interactive adventure. So I'm going to be reading it out, and then Dan has to pick a path. It's like an old Goosebumps kind of book.
Okay.
We'll see.
Am I reading dialogue at all, or are you going to do it all?
I'll do it all. Why not? And then I'll give you the agency of picking.
Lovely.
Okay, so we return to the adventures of the podcast trials, an interactive adventure. Chapter 3, Monkey. Parentheses, adjective. Sunlight streams through stained glass windows, illuminating a constellation of sparkling dust that drifts about the cathedral nave. Despite their existing naval fetish, Simon and Dan have never seen one so grand as this.
Well done.
Great.
Very clever.
This is going about as well as I thought it would. Their whiplashed brains assume an association with divinity. As they take in more of the cathedral, their eyes begin to flash about in search of Patreon money or other signs of heaven. It takes several seconds for them to notice a kindly, aging monk standing quietly nearby. But when they do, Dan takes to introductions like a man born to cavort with the clergy. "Salutations, venerable father." Simon rolls his eyes. The monk smiles at them. "Good day, my sons. Clark, Moore." He extends a wrinkled hand, which Simon shakes, slaps, fist bumps, and wiggles his fingers at.
Of course you do.
This is great. "I am Prior Philip," says the monk, "and this is Kingsbridge Cathedral. I believe that you two are well acquainted with the churches of the future, are you not? Our mutual friend, the venerable Mr. Tim Cook, sent you here to be quizzed." "Quizzed?" asked a hesitant Dan. "Forgive me, father, but I had hoped that our encyclopedic knowledge might have been of more practical use to you and yours." The prior gives Dan a knowing nod. "My son, you must understand that Mr. Cook has sent us many visitors, the greatest religious minds of your day, from the Pope to the Dalai Lama and beyond. We document their vision here at Kingsbridge Priory with the goal of determining the ideal religion." He clears his throat. "Personal opinions aside. Now, I do not know where nor how Mr. Cook intends to implement such blueprints. They are all but complete. Sine colore, perhaps, but the details have passed to Mr. Cook and his team to be sung ab libitum. I have been told to receive you and to test you, and to be entirely truthful, I don't see the purpose any more than you do." What would you like to do, Dan? Would you like to admit that you're as confused as he is, or insist that there must be some way you can help?
I think we must insist that there is some way we can help.
Roger, roger. The prior rubs his chin thoughtfully. Well, I did consider putting your choral knowledge to use. In fact, I spent an entire day trying to incorporate it into the story before tearing it all out, drowning it in gasoline, and torching it with extreme prejudice. But I think that was a touch of Cameron shining through there. But as I understand it, your last trial was awfully unfair in regard to Dr. Clark's knowledge of physics. Indeed, I hear that the poor man barely had a chance to demonstrate his indisputable anthology of knowledge. I would hate for that to happen to two men in one day. Daniel nods gratefully as the prior turns away to clear his throat. Poser. Now then, says Prior Philip, we have a task set before us. Let us begin the Inquisition. Dan stands tall, ready to be quizzed, as Simon searches frantically for Spaniards. Out on the cathedral grounds, many monks and initiates have gathered to witness your trial, excited by the opportunity to test their own knowledge. From just down the hill, you hear the sound of many busybodies in the happy-go-lucky, not at all repeatedly scarred town of Kingsbridge. Prior Philip addresses Dan in a resounding tenor. Daniel, my son!
Beautiful.
You'll be presented with 37 questions. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, I'm not going to count to 37. To pass through the last 2 trials, you must answer 32 of them correctly. Your first question is this. With the exception of Italy, where is the baptismal font located in a cathedral, and why? So, you can choose between it's in the belfry, so that the baptized can be pushed off of the roof if they start convulsing.
Yes.
It's built in the cellar, so the water might be exchanged for a sweet liqueur after a particularly stressful Sunday Mass. Or, let me Google that real quick. Or, wait, I actually know this one.
I can't think of any example where the font isn't located at the front of the church, as in where you come in. So I'm going to go with wait, I actually know this one.
Okay. Please follow the link below. Oh God, there's are you on this as well?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Click play in 3, 2, 1.
Hang on. Give me a sec. Right. Okay. Give me a countdown again.
Right. Press play in 3. Sorry. To explain for listeners at home, we now have an audio file that has been included in this, and we're going to press play together in 3, 2, 1. Play.
You lie! You lie!
Okay. You have 2 options.
I haven't got any audio.
Oh, it's you'll hear it in the podcast.
Okay. Well, I'll trust you.
They're accusing you of being a liar. So you can go back or no, seriously, I really do know this one.
I mean, in fairness, I've been to a lot of cathedrals and a lot of churches now, and I honestly cannot think of an example where they're not there.
Okay, let me go to that bookmark.
You lie!
It takes you back to the same audio file, Dan.
Okay.
Or is it? Oh, hang on, is it? No, it takes you back to the same place. So I think I was expecting you to give a different answer.
Okay, fine.
So it's in the belfry, it's in the cellar, or let me Google that real quick.
Let's Google it.
Okay, let me Google that real quick. Dan sweats profusely in his 9th favourite black dress shirt.
Oh yeah, I know the one well.
Would it be okay if I Googled that? Well, says the prior, I don't actually know what that means, so I suppose so, if it won't take too long. 10 seconds and a lucky Wi-Fi hotspot later, Daniel answers the question confidently, if rather sheepishly. The baptismal font is located near the entrance because baptism signifies entrance into the church's community.
See? Look, I did know that.
You did. You genuinely did.
Thank God. I mean, I really ought to after all this time.
The prior is absolutely awestruck. By the Lord, he whispers, trembling, you are a cut above the others. What ability you must have to answer even the questions you do not know. He grips you by the shoulders and sizes you up anew. What else can you do with this incredible rectangle of yours, young Daniel? Standing on the side...
I've never heard it described quite like that before. But, the phone.
The phone.
Right,
He means the phone.
Sorry. Yeah, go on.
Standing on the sidelines, Simon gets a little fed up with all this undeserved attention. He pulls out a rectangle of his own.
Oh no. Oh God, no, not in a church.
In a church, no! Strides up to the prior, pushes his friend gently out of the way and says, if you think that's impressive, check this out. It's called Internet Port... and there's a... Despite your rather limited range of movement, you can barely see Prior Philip and his monks nearby, discussing what they should do next. Simon turns slightly to whisper to his friend, remember how Tim said that we can call in our friends? Do you think we can do that whenever we want? If we can, Dan replies, then now is the time. Let's give it a go. Oh my God. Now, you must choose an ally to come to your aid. If you choose the best option, I'll mark it with a bingo so that you can come right back and try the others first if you want to. Despite their cameos being rather brief, I put a lot of work into these. Consider checking them out in your own time. Today, your options are Pyrian, Hannah, and Hannah.
Right, well, I'm going to go with Pyrian.
Pyrian. Despite not having had him on the show yet, Simon and Dan feel a special bond with their podcasting rival Pyrian Flax and decide to ask him for help. Pyrian teleports into the world server and looks around in bewilderment.
Well done.
Bewilderment. I can English.
Wakanda forever.
Okay, I've got to I've got to try and get a Pyrian voice now. What is Pyrian?
No, okay. Now I'd be very careful with what you do here. I don't know necessarily whether you need to give Pyrian a voice. I think a normal voice would suit Pyrian just fine.
What? Simon? Hang on a second. He chugs down the rest of his Huel. Hey, says Simon, sorry to interrupt. I hope you weren't recording the Triforce podcast. That's Triforce, followed by an exclamation point, or in the middle of a game of Dota. Dota? Pyrian scoffs. Dota's out, mate. It's Pokemon Unite all the way down.
Amazing.
In the distance, Prior Philip and much of his entourage have passed into the cathedral, but many monks remain. They stare at Pyrian, awestruck, and one of them whispers, Brother Pyrian? Could it really be you? Pyrian turns, and Simon reflexively shields his eyes. The noonday sun strikes Pyrian's shiny bald head at an angle most holy, and reflected light explodes from his skin.
Incredible. I mean, what's happening?
Further whispers cut off as a concentrated sunbeam pours forth from Pyrian's scalp, growing as it moves, bounding forth like a roaring lion of light. The torrent of light bounces energetically between the many shaved heads in the courtyard, pointedly ignoring those with hair. And then, finally, it alights upon the great circular window at the front of the cathedral, which bursts into a scintillating rainbow of colour. A great pyre of flame erupts from the belfry and bursts towards the heavens in celebration of an ancient brotherhood brought back to life.
Lux aeterna luceat est Domine.
The elderly monk who had whispered turns to face his fellows. The missing piece has at last come to light, he shouts, very quietly. Our long-lost brother has returned to us, and the chrome domes are... For God's sake, that's definitely meant to be. The chrome domes are united once again. Long live Chromedom! The gathered monks cheer. Pyrian weeps happy tears as he embraces each of his brethren in turn. It's so good to be back, boys, he whispers. It's so good to be home. The group of monks walk off in joyous chorus and leave you, as you are, still stuck in the pillory. Philip and those who were with him soon return, and they resume the discussion of your fate. It looks like Pyrian had more important things to do, but don't be afraid. Your bed isn't made yet, for some other old friend might still come to your aid. So now we have a choice of Hannah and Hannah. There are no surnames given.
Okay, well, I'm going to go with... I'll go with Hannah A.
Hannah A. Bingo. Okay, right. Hannah Witten zaps into the world server like crashing thunder. Simon greets her loudly. Hannah! Help! Philip is bullying us because I sullied his long-standing lack of sexuality.
Okay.
Hannah turns to appraise the elderly monk. You're Philip? Yes, young lady. Now, you and your friends... Prior Philip of Kingsbridge. Yes. Now, listen. The same Prior Philip who refused to the marriage of and despite the fact that they were unbelievably into Has Hannah read Pillars of the Earth? I don't imagine it would frustrate her any less if it did me. I don't know what that means. What are those beeping?
I'm worried there that what Fergus is going to do is only bleep out the words where you've swear. I think you might need to record that line again.
No, Fergus, I'll send you a link to this. It'll be very clear.
Okay.
Right?
Right?
What are those beeping noises? Simon whispers to Dan. I think there might be spoilers for something. The prior is entirely taken aback. Miss, please, you have to understand that was all out of my hands. My lady, Hannah steamrolls relentlessly over the stammering monk. I am awed, she says. I am appalled that you could think yourself worthy to judge others in the manner of sexuality after what you've done. Simon looks over at Dan as Hannah. What? Simon looks over at Dan as Hannah.
I think probably at Dan as Hannah says.
Oh, I see. You know, I feel like this has been going on for a little too long. Dan raises his eyebrows. What, the lecture? I think it's entirely justified, unlike your ludicrous behaviour earlier. No, I mean this trial. We've been here for like 50 minutes, maybe an hour. Dan begins to understand. Yes, you're right. We can't possibly allow any adventure to last more than 60 minutes. Having said that, this is like the longest episode we've recorded in ages. Not even if there were, say, another 10 or 15 minutes of quality correspondence to read out. Let's wrap this up. Hannah finishes tearing apart the prior and poofs back to the real world. And I like this, that Hannah Witten comes in like an avenging angel, just to berate a bunch of monks. An ashen-faced Philip strides up to the imprisoned Wikicasters and sets them free. He speaks quickly. "My sons, I have a great deal to think about, and I'm entirely unfit to judge your trial in this state. I will inform Mr. Cook that you have succeeded by default." And just like that, Simon and Dan are back in the server room. You remember the server room, Dan?
Oh, I remember the server room.
Tim and Smothers.
He says, not remembering the server room.
This was where we were originally sent out to our adventures from.
Yes.
Tim and his assistant Smothers haven't noticed the boys' silent reappearance. They continue to speak to one another in hushed tones. "I know it's grim," says Mr. Smothers, "but it has to be done. This is just another step towards the fulfillment of your vision. All you have to do is give the order and the technicians will take care of the rest." "You're right, of course," says Mr. Cook. He sags his head thoughtfully. "You always are." Smothers begins to interject, but Mr. Cook stops him, having finally caught sight of Dan and Simon. "Ah, the victors return! Well done, gentlemen, well done." Smothers abruptly departs, and the chapter abruptly... That's it, that's all he wrote.
Wow. That's all he wrote.
Meta. Very meta.
That was marvellous.
Wow, Cameron. It was certainly something.
That section of the noonday sun strikes Pyrrhon's shiny bald head at an angle most holy, and reflected light explodes from his skin.
Wow.
I just pray that he never ever hears this.
I pray that no one ever listens to this, Dan. That's my solemn wish every episode.
I think it's amazing, Cameron. You're an absolute legend. I adore this, and I'm going to go back and see the other.
Because there were some paths that we didn't take.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, Simon, what have we turned this leak?
God, what is wrong with us today?
I don't know. Let's try that again. So, Simon, what have we learned today?
Today, Dan, we've learned about Mascot, Sternwheeler, which was a boat that has an outrageously long Wikipedia article for just being a small wooden boat. But I found it very interesting, and I hope people did too.
Absolutely. We also spoke about music, and specifically my piece of the week, which is Vaughan Williams' A Sea Symphony. We had a throwback to the music of our youth.
And I would be interested to hear other people email, because we had one or two other emails come in about sort of the most interesting thing to happen to people this year, which is what we asked people to email in about last week. I'd be also interested to hear about people's albums that they, because that's going to show people's ages, and it'd be interesting to get that. It's almost like a survey of the Wikicast. Like if you email in with what the albums were that you listened to as a teenager, I'd be really, really interested to hear about that.
And that's all for this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to us on your podcasting service of choice, join the Discord, and if you'd like to see our faces, check out our YouTube channel, Spongy and Electric.
The most interesting thing to happen to you so far this year, your teenage album listens, and other thoughts on the show can be sent to us at spongyelectric@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
Join us again for another tumble down the wiki rabbit hole,
and we'll see you next time. Station for power converters. Well, I guess I'm going nowhere. It just isn't fair. Wookie.
Someone kill this walking carpet.
Wookie. Wookie.
Well, I guess you don't know anything
about women.
Who's
your daddy? Who's your daddy? Look, love your father. Oh, hey.
What the hell are you doing?
Pixel Girls just walked in.
Ah,
Interrupt,
classic.
But like,
Yeah.
you okay?
You also only heard one side of that. Dan is also singing with me.
Right, okay.